So what happened, I heard this guy, Stephen Porges, Dr. Porges, he is a professor of the University of Illinois in Chicago, and I heard him talking about twice already in the past and read a little bit of his writings. And then what happened, this book was published earlier this year, and he had a book launch kind of workshop in Los Angeles, which is a nice place, Beverly Hills Country Club, in West LA. Very nice location, and good free parking and everything. So he had this show together, an all-day show, together with Pat Ogden. If you don't know Pat Ogden, she is a body therapist. She calls her system sensory motor psychotherapy, and she works out from Colorado, and Boulder, Colorado, and she is fascinating. She is fun, she is huggable, she knows a lot, she's natural with kind, she's wonderful. So the show was basically a double show. Dr. Porges presented his theory of polyvagal theory. You know, he has been working on it for about 45 years, and this is the crown jewel of the 45 years of this book. So it was a book launch, and Pat was presenting her cases on video, and both of them discussed the cases, and we could ask questions, make comments. So it was a kind of a wonderful, I would say, a time of ecstasy for the whole day. It was May 1st. And at the evening, you know, I went to my friends, and then television, there was the announcement from Obama that Bin Laden, the Bin Laden story came out that same evening. Anyway, my challenge today is to tell you about this theory in a way which would be like a bird's eye view, and I hope I can make it clear and simple and useful. So please stop me or ask questions if I get somehow lost or if I get confusing. So this has been worked on from the 60s when he was a graduate student. He studied vagal influences on the heart, how the vagus influences the heart, and he realized that it's not as simple as people were thinking. Now, to back up a little bit from that, let me just point out that most of us probably learned about the autonomic nervous system in a very simplistic way, that we have a sympathetic nervous system which energizes us for action, physical action, okay, changes the heart rate, the blood pressure, shut down partially the digestive system, put them on hold, certain functions which are not immediately necessary, reorient the activities of the body, and the parasympathetic nervous system would bring us back to normal, kind of, after the emergency is over. And the whole issue of stress was very closely connected with the sympathetic nervous system. So this was a model which we could consider as a paired antagonistic model. So we had a sympathetic, a parasympathetic, and they worked in the opposite direction from each other, and they were paired. That was the view. What he did with his studies, he replaced this model with a three-part hierarchical model. So instead of pair antagonistic, with a three-part hierarchical model. And let us get to it, how he started making this discovery. Studying the influences of the vagus on the heart, he realized that it's not simple. There are at least two classes of influences for the heart, how the vagus influences the heart. And then anatomically, he compared these two classes, what part of the vagus influences the heart in what way. And he realized that there is a portion of the vagus motor neurons, which are very slow, unmyelinated neurons, and they have one class of influence, and there are neurons which are myelinated and fast, and they have a different class of influence on the heart. And he studied a little more of it, and he realized that the myelinated part of the vagus, which are the finely tuned modifiers of heart function. And fast and finely tuned actually are intertwined in their influence in the regulatory functions with the control of the facial muscles, the middle ear, vocalization, and the throat, larynx and pharynx, and breathing. So all these things together, which we need for human communication, are actually controlled by a coherent system. And that was so exciting to hear and to read. And further on, he specified the locations in the brainstem where these influences come from. And he realized, and some other people also worked on it, but he was the one who finally integrated everything, that there is a dorsal motor nucleus in the brainstem which is connected to the slow fibers in the vagus. And there is a ventral nucleus which is called nucleus ambiguus. Very interesting. Which is ambiguous, yes. Which is, so the one was the dorsal motor nucleus of the vagus, other one was a nucleus ambiguus, which was one of the central processing area for the high frequency, for the high speed, very sensitive kind of parts of the vagal regulation. And he came up with these names. He had to name the two systems somehow. So he came up with the name dorsal vagal complex and ventral vagal complex. And unfortunately, he didn't explain it in his lecture, so I was confused to his lecture where these words came from, and I had to read a book to find out. But anyway, now we know that the dorsal vagal complex is a regulatory system which is kind of gross and slow. And it relates to the dorsal nucleus in the brainstem. And the ventral vagal complex, ventral dorsal, is actually related to the nucleus ambiguus and related structures and other cranial nerves which work with the face and the middle ear and the throat. And he calls this whole system the ventral vagal complex. Is it clear? Everybody happy? Didn't confuse anybody, because I was afraid that this can fall sometimes on its bottom. Okay, now, so having these components, we can now turn to the first page, and you see his name and the book title there, and it says that we can think about the automatic nervous system as having 3 subdivisions instead of 2, and these 3 subdivisions actually correspond to 3 behavioral strategies. And the lowest one, the least complex one, is the immobilization system, which has to do with the freezing response and the shutting down. And it's supported by the dorsal vagal complex and so on. And it has to do with supporting metabolic activity normally, and also decreasing, the maintenance activities in the abdomen, normally, like digestion and other maintenance activities, and working against the sympathetic system, in other words, decreasing metabolic activity. Now, the second system would be the fight and flight system, which everybody knows, related to the stress hormones and so on. And the third system would be the social communication and social engagement system. That is the name he came up with, which relates to the very complex network of the fast myelinated fibers from the vagus working together with other cranial nerves to regulate the heartbeat, regulate the breathing, vocalization, hearing, facial expression, communication with each other. So that is a big system, and if we turn to the next page, he invented the word neuroception. And he likes new words. It looks like in 45 years he kind of created a few new words. Neuroception in his vocabulary relates to autonomic, unconscious or auto-awareness connections or perception to influences in the body. So basically we detect dangers or we detect friendly entities like Lola in our environment unconsciously before we would have time to think about it. Mm-hmm. And that relates to body regulation processes. Right away, body regulation kicks in and things happen. Mm-hmm. Now this neuroception, as the bottom picture shows on this second page, is that if the environment is detected as safe, we are able to use the social engagement system. So we are free to be ourselves. If we see people who are friendly to us, who are not dangerous, we can freely express our own feelings, we can use our facial expression, we can use modulated voices, we can breathe calmly, our heart is relatively calm, and we can filter out human language from the background and do things like that. And actually be able to play, even to have mock aggressive things, you know, saying some fun jokes or rock and tumble playing, because it's safe. We know by neuroception it's safe. Now, if it is not safe, if our neuroception tells our brain that the situation is not safe, then we fall back on the fight and flight system, that now we have to do something about survival. And either we can challenge the problem or we can try to rescue ourselves, taking ourselves out of the situation. Mm-hmm. And this relates to the sympathetic system and the supporting humoral systems, the whole humoral system related to stress. Now, if that thing fails, so if we try and we cannot fix the situation, then we fall back on the most primitive system. Mm-hmm. So if something turns into a life threat, then very frequently we go into shutdown, into freezing and shutting down. Now, what freezing means is sometimes complicated, because we have freezing which is kind of tense freezing, you know, and the sympathetic nervous system is still active, or we can have the limb freezing when we collapse. And this shutdown is more like the limb freezing. And that relates to the ancient system, to the unmyelinated vagus, which modulates this. Now, we all know situations from real life when people go into a surprising situation, what they perceive as kind of dangerous. They can defecate involuntarily, they can urinate involuntarily. What does the vagus do? Supports bowel movements. Supports, actually not the vagus, but the other nerve, the sacral nerve, which is working together with the vagus, supports the urinary functions. So those things get out of control, they overshoot, and people can involuntarily urinate or defecate, or they can pass out. Because the vagus, when the vagus kicks in, the unmyelinated vagus, generally metabolism is lowered, the heartbeat is lowered, and it can be, if it is uncontrolled, it can lead to passing out.
And would this be analogous to what's otherwise thought of as depression, the kind of giving up,
I think
playing
that,
dead, no lack of energy,
can't
eat, can't
think
sleep?
it is. I think it is. He doesn't talk much about it as far as I know, but he allows for these things blending, these three levels blending in different proportions, in different configurations. So the shutting down mechanism can be moderately present at certain situations, it can be conditioned as a conditioned response. And I think it's wonderful, the PTSD shutting down, the depression, shutting down, the situation, like think about an unfortunate rape situation, when somebody is attacked. first maybe the person tries to fight it, so that would be the fight and flight response.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, the person somehow gets it. It's not helping. And the person may go into the shutdown as the next day. So in a general sense, we can, oh my God, this thing, I didn't press it right, I'm sorry.
So
How many minutes is?
we're fine.
We are fine, okay. You didn't jump in. Anyway, so basically, we can think about these three systems that it's a hierarchy, and the shutdown system is inhibited normally by the fight and flight system, and the fight and flight system is inhibited by the social engagement system, kept in check. So if we remove the good functioning of the social engagement system, fight and flight gets disinhibited. If we remove the high energy state, that disinhibits the shutting down. And it can work in a kind of a helpful way too. Like for example, early mornings, many people feel closer to the shutdown phase, kind of low energy, kind of that morning feels like, you know, like a sit down. And then action helps, because action activates the fight and flight kind of system, so physical action. So do things physically, get up. Even standing up activates baroreceptors. And that baroreceptors already help. Just standing up with the baroreceptors in the carotid sinuses here. So it's a very interesting model. Now getting a little bit more about this social engagement system, he gets into details of describing what else takes part in that system. And what is, for example, that we can hear the human voice better when the social engagement system is active, because it has to filter out the high frequencies and modulations in the human voice from the background. The background has a lot of rough sounds, low frequency sounds which are strong. And to override this and filter out the human voice, we have to adjust the middle ear. And we have the 3 middle ear bones and muscles available for adjusting our resonance to the different frequencies. And this way, we humans are lucky that we can hear the high frequency elements of sound, the modulated sound, better than, for example, reptiles which do not have the 3 middle ear bones and the muscles. So reptiles have pretty rough, kind of gross hearing systems. And we mammals have much more modulated, much more available from different point of view. Our hearing systems, our auditory systems are much more finely tuned due to the physical stuff what we have. Now this brings me back to just a very brief reference to the phylogenetic element here. Dr. Paul just loves phylogenetic view, and he thinks about it as an organizing principle in presenting his system. And actually, he has some interesting table in his book when he points out that some of the earliest vertebrates, the most primitive ones, the jawless fish, the most primitive group of fish, have no automatic nervous system as we know it. What they have diffuse cells which produce epinephrine and norepinephrine in their bodies, but they are not organized into an adrenal gland. And that's all. That's it. That's what they have. So they can modulate their behavior only up to a chemically, and it's not very well kind of organized, so it's kind of a slow and general system. Now, the next group of fish, the cartilaginous fish, like the sharks and the rays, already are better off because they have the unmyelinated vagus. So they can do this slowing down the metabolism or in an organized way, so they can kind of wait out bad times. When there is not enough food, there is danger, they can go to the deep and hide. And they don't die because the vagus coordinates everything that can survive with little nutrition, little oxygen. So these are all kinds of fish basically. The cartilaginous fish were the first, and then the bony fish were the second. But then the bony fish had another development. They have the first sympathetic nervous system. So when you eat your catfish or something similar, you know, you can congratulate that they are the first in development, in evolution, to get a sympathetic nervous system as we know it. But they still don't have adrenal glands. The adrenal tissues are still distributed loosely in the body. They are called chromatophore tissues, chromaffin tissues. Chromaffin, chrome affinity, because they are actually, they use a chrome kind of compound to stain them, to see them under a microscope. So I call them chromaffin tissues, are chrome affinity tissues. And they have only those tissues, but basically what happens is that in the reptiles, finally, the adrenal glands are integrated. So still the amphibians, the frogs don't have adrenal glands as we have, but the reptiles have. So it is very interesting how in the phylogenesis these things gradually kicked in and became organized. And finally, only the mammals are the ones which have this highly evolved ventral vagal system. Only the mammals. And what happens is that this makes possible for the mammals to have finer regulation of metabolism. Because this system is highly myelinated, it's fast, it's very complex, it interacts with many other systems. So if you need more energy, you don't have to go all the way to trigger the sympathetic system in a big way. And if you have to lower the energy, you don't have to shut down all the way, but you can modulate as you need it within a beautiful range with fine tuning.
So is it his and your idea then that ability to modulate is on the path towards social engagement?
That's it. That's it.
Good.
And it's intertwined with the social, otherwise we couldn't have the social engagement.
Yeah, because you'd be always like that, fight or flight.
Yeah, we will go to extremes.
Yes.
But this is, and you see I'm so proud of the last sentence on the first page, because I tried to kind of describe it in one sentence on the first page, and so I wrote on the sentence about half a day, and finally I got it right.
Various activity levels, yes.
Probably I got it right, that last sentence. So to have this idea of fine modulation so that we don't have to go all the way up or all the way down, and that makes it possible that we can do the social engagement thing. Plus, we have the equipment, like we have the ear sensitive to certain frequencies, and also we have the regulation of facial muscles, which the reptiles, look at the face of an alligator or the face of a snake.
Inexpressive.
Very inexpressive. And look at any kind of mammal, look at the little mouse, look at any dog. Okay, how much expression is there? How much social modulation is there in the face, in the eyes, in the voice? And for example, that thing with these modulations comes in with a voice in a way. And
so would you say then that the model before this was under threat or stress, humans flee or fight or freeze?
Yeah.
So the PTSD model that leads to all these disruptions of the sense of self and comfort in the world and blah blah blah, and kind of repetitive experiences of dread. But if you add affiliation as a response, the social engagement system, you have a whole different set of therapeutic possibilities.
Wonderful, yes. Yeah, and by the way, freeze wasn't very well explained before. But he is setting aside this immobilization system with the primitive vagus.
He's saying it's like playing dead, which is very
It was
powerful
actually
idea.
dying, the voodoo death, or there were some experiments with rats when they were allowed to, actually allowed in a way, they were forced to drown. And they got wild rats, lab rats can swim 4 hours usually when you put them into an inescapable swimming tank with, you know, those vertical walls which are slick, you cannot get out. And there was this guy, Richter is his name, I think, and it was in the 50s experiment, and they used these domesticated rats, the lab rats, and they swam longer, and they had wild rats, and they died usually within 15 minutes. And then they did the autopsy, and they found out that the heart was stopped by the vagus. Huh. You can tell it, but the heart was stopped like systolic or diastolic. I don't know exactly the physics of it, but it was a vagal death. So that
they gave up.
They gave up in a sense. They just went, I cannot help, a kind of their own version of realizing that they cannot help, that it's a life-threatening situation, inescapable, and the vagus just killed them. So that would be the extreme, and in humans, there's this thing about the voodoo death. Some people think it's a similar thing. And finally, we have this, a little the third page in my handout. This is a Burt Bacharach kind of song, The Look of Love. And he gives a very nice, let me just go through it very fast, how the social engagement system's components fit in with his theory. The look of love is in your eyes. He says, yes, these are the expressive eyes. And actually, the upper part of the face is more important than the lower part for some reason. And I wonder whether people who try to detect lying get some help from this. But anyway, the upper part is the more expressive. And the look your smile cannot disguise. So again, the facial muscles tell you more truthfully what is happening than your words. The look of love is saying so much more. Again, the facial muscles, neck, lip muscles tell you much more than the words. Than just the words could ever say. And in the words, again, what is more important than the actual content of the words is the rhythm and the intonation. That gives away the social connection. Whether you are safe or whether you are adversary somehow. So he makes a big deal about this prosody thing, about the rhythm and the intonation of speech. And that, and then continues, and what my heart has heard, again, this is a vagal regulation of the heart, middle ear muscles and face connection. So basically, in this context, the heart is regulated. Well, it takes my breath away. That together, the vagus regulates the breathing also with the heart in finely tuned way, not going all the way up or all the way down. And I can hardly wait to hold you, feel my arms around you. And the immobilization without fear. There's this wonderful expression, immobilization without fear. So that we can lower our activity and we don't need that alarm kind of trigger for it.
That's when you sleep comfortably next to somebody.
Wonderful.
You're
immobile,
but comfortable and engaged even though you're unconscious.
Engagement, you
So
are unconscious.
it's kind of the positive side of that immobility. It's a kind of stasis, it's low activity, but it's not under threat.
But now in his view, that is regulated by the ventral vagus system, not by the ancient vagus.
Does he talk about brainstem processing?
These are all
subcortical mechanisms that influence
he talks
the
about the
vagus.
connections to those vagus, and he even mentions oxytocin and vasopressin. His wife wrote on the oxytocin, and that is related also to this system of the social connection, affiliation.
Right. But there's some, Damasio is talking about actual brain, subcortical mechanisms, particularly
He does, I didn't get into that, He does, and he's very technical about it with the 500 plus references. He reviewed those things, and he
But the
wrote on
interesting
some
thing
of
is
them.
how the processing happens, because the processing for instance, can happen from auditory nerve.
Yeah.
You can actually be unconscious,
Yeah.
anesthetized, and be hearing. This is what David Cheek found
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah.
You can be under anesthesia and respond to what your doctor is saying about, oh God, I dropped a stitch, or boom, the patient's
Yeah.
blood pressure goes up.
Yeah.
But supposedly the patient is unconscious.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense according to his theory, but I didn't read about that. Maybe it is somewhere hidden in. What he talks about is using his auditory stimulation with autistic kids, so that he exposes autistic children in several sessions, in 5 sessions I think, to sounds which are similar to the human sound in frequencies and modulation, but reinforced, kind of made even more human-like, so computer enhanced, and then he exposes them 1 hour at a time. And he says that he got some good results, that the autistic kids were more communicative afterwards. So that he himself was overdoing it, like listening to it like 6 hours a day for I don't know how many weeks, and he was hypersensitive to the human sounds for a while until he went back to where he was before. So he does work with the auditory system. In that sense, he writes about it, and I just want to point out, and finally, just to finish up this thing, is finally the last page is about therapy, that all this is obviously related to therapy with the social engagement system to meet expectancy of the clients. If we misjudge the expectancy, we may miscommunicate, and then reciprocity is very helpful, and violations can be repaired. So through the social engagement system, using the facial expressions and the intonations and other strategies, we can, in therapy, according to him, using his principles of the social engagement system, repair, even if some things went wrong in the therapy, we can repair them using this system. Again, the basic idea is creating safety. That's his core word, creating safety.
Yes, for Kohlheim, it was empathic understanding of the empathic failure. Was the way to do it, and that increased the client's ability to then do that for themselves. In other words, that was building very slowly a modulating system.
Yes.
But through the central cortex, using the
Yeah.
cortical functions
Yeah.
to modulate the subcortical functions. And the DBT people do a version of that also by trying to teach explicit scales.
Yeah, they try to do that, yeah.
Yeah.
They try to do that. So he basically provides an automatic nervous system background view of these things. Now, if you are interested, so this is his book, which is very technical, very kind of lots of references. It's a research, kind of summary of 45 years of research. Now, what is fun to read is this. This thing, you can Google his name, go to his website, he has a website, and this is a conversation with Ruth Buczynski from NICA-BM, I don't know whether you know, at the National Institute for the Clinical Application of Behavioral Medicine. And she had this discussion with him, it's available from his website. You can print it out, it's 28 pages. And that's a very relaxed discussion about the basic issues what I talked about in a less technical way. So it's a fun reading, and you can just download from his website. His website has several entries. I think this is the popular literature, some kind of not the technical literature. And then you find this NICA-BM kind of item there. And if you just Google his name, Google brings you several research articles, and this is one of them. I just had one about the phylogenetic issues because I thought that I just got very much interested in those.
Attila, what is meant by recruit features of the social engagement system?
Okay, it means that he tries to activate them, like for example,
like face-to-face contact,
like
that's not frightening.
and that you are calm and calm and have a positive attitude, and then your facial muscles and your eyes and your voice give away that you are a friendly entity, and you recruit the client's social engagement system by being what you are, a friendly entity, detectable involuntarily by the client.
Just like emergency medical technicians tend, in my experience of them, tend to be very agreeable people. They're not frightening, there are many things they're not, but they're like ordinary guys. They come in, they take over, they're reassuring, but they do it in a they make contact. It's a very ordinary exchange while their hands are busy with all the technology.
They create that atmosphere of safety.
Of ordinary safety.
Yeah.
It's like, this is okay, right? No, we'll take care of this.
Yeah.
Oh, you're having trouble breathing, you're bleeding out, here's what we're going to do. There's something about it that matches this idea of recruiting ordinary social engagement in extraordinary situations.
In extraordinary situations.
They're not cold, they're expressive, reassuring, they make contact. It's just the right kind, but meanwhile, all the extraordinary things are going on. And I've had this experience myself and seen it, and it's very compelling. It's like the ordinary, it's like before major surgery, my surgeon turned to the room of his assistants and said, "Okay, boys and girls."
Yeah, just another day.
And it gave that ordinary social engagement. Here we are, we're all doing this thing.
Yeah.
And the thing we were doing was life and death, but it doesn't matter because I think from your description of the theory, we're reading in the social cues an ordinary vagal and cortical and metabolic sign. Say everything's okay, but my body can calm down now. And I think a similar thing when Sandra and Marika put their hands on you. They're very agreeable people. They're not cold, they're not gushy, they're kind of straightforward. They make contact.
Wonderful.
Physically, they're doing intricate and sophisticated things interactively, like a surgeon would, but they're chatty.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning this. Actually, hearing their presentation, Rika and Marika presentation, is very humbling for me, because they pointed out how much is beyond all this, what we don't know. How much else is which is important, which works, and he just barely scratched the surface in a sense. But it's a good scratching of the surface.
Oh yes.
I have a question about can using a technique which embraces this knowledge diffuse potential violent interaction? In other words, if you someone who would be hostile or violent or angry at you, if you came across socially like, how are you? I haven't seen you in a long time. Could you diffuse the situation? Could you bypass the anger by going right to a social, I mean, even though you don't feel it entirely inside, but to, use the facial expressions of just a common social situation?
This was Erickson's advice to deal with extraordinary situations. One day he was in Central Park and a guy came up to him and put a gun in his face and said, "You know what this is?" He said, "Yeah, it's about 2:45. Kept walking. And his advice was, when confronted with a situation that's extraordinary, act as though it's ordinary, but in a completely different context.
Okay.
So he was able to diffuse this potentially explosive situation. The guy was just standing there feeling foolish, looking at his own gun. I don't know if I would have the wherewithal to do it, but he did it with such aplomb and such emotional. Yeah, it's about 2:45.
Calm down.
As though the man had asked him what time it was.
Yeah.
So he took the extraordinary request, which is, can you recognize that I've got a gun pointed at your head? and transformed it into a different kind of statement.
And it probably had an internal
Stunning.
effect on the guy with the gun.
And I was frozen.
It would be a stunning.
was absolutely
stunning
stunning.
effect.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. This is wonderful. I don't think that Dr. Borges would have the same answer.
Oh, okay.
I don't think that he would probably have tried, but
Yeah.
people are different learning histories. You know, you don't know.
Yeah.
But keep trying. But this is a higher level, I think.
Oh yeah.
Much
There are
higher. I don't think
reports of
Dr.
women.
Borges is
Yeah.
there.
Of women that manage to maintain social connection with the rapist and avoided the whole situation. Just
have
by
heard that.
looking them in the eye, maintaining a good contact and avoiding a violent situation.
If
Yeah.
they can get the response.
Yeah.
Because I know instances where the woman has tried that
And it
and
doesn't
the
work.
guys kept at her and she had to succumb. A friend of ours that happened
Yeah.
to. But
And then there was another woman who was on the news who did exactly that. She unfortunately was raped. He forced her into her own home, and in the morning she made breakfast for him. I'm sure everybody heard. She made breakfast for him and talked about a book she was reading. She normalized and socialized, and he gave himself up.
Wow.
That is
And
beautiful.
this was in the
do you want
news.
to tell your story about the guy who snatched your purse? You don't.
Yeah, no, I
Oh,
will,
do.
but I don't know that it is.
Why not?
Oh, it's a very good story.
Oh. I was, the corner of Marin and San Pablo. You know that corner? There's a police station on one side,
Yes.
gas station on the other side, just
There are
an
two
open
gas
field
stations,
on one
yeah.
side, and then another, bunch of
Gas
stores,
station.
another gas station. Well, I was getting my gas in my car at the gas station on this side, and I left my purse in the car stupidly. This is years ago. This is when we first met.
I know, it's
And
a good
I-
story.
Yeah, I did. I did. I guess I normalized it a little bit. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw this guy walk past my car, reach in, grab my purse, and head across the street toward the police station. And I thought, everything was in my purse. Not money, but all the ID and all the horrors of getting all that thing, the IDs. So I ran across after him, and he had it under his coat like this. And I said, please don't do that. I will give you money. Just let me have my purse back. I promise I'll give you money. He said, what are you talking about? I don't have your purse. I said, I know you do. I know it's under your coat. I know you have my purse. And the whole time, all I had to do is scream, right? And I said to him, I didn't say anything about the police department. I just said, I will give you money. I don't have enough in there. This is very risky. I'll take you up to my bank. I'll take money out of the bank, give you money. And he took the purse out and he says, I don't know why I'm doing this. He gave me my purse back.
And you gave him money?
We walked up across the street, got in my car. I took him to the bank. I got $40 out. I gave him $40. And I said, do you need change for the bus? And so I went in my side of my car in the middle part. I had change purse with money. I said, here's change for the bus. Took him back down the street to the bus station. I think I was, and so I said, I know it's, times are tough, and, we're all struggling, blah, blah, blah. He said, yeah, my sister just lost her job. He started to tell me his story, and then he said, are you married? It was like, what? We went from, but I think I was, huh?
You changed his life.
I did. Maybe I did. Maybe I...
But she wouldn't date him. He thought that mugging somebody was a good approach.
So anyway, but the thing that I wanted to say about what you're talking about, and I know it's extrapolating a lot, is that years ago I heard about a man who had done an experiment with very vicious dogs. Dogs that would attack before they would, be petted, nothing like her. And what he did was, and I have to demonstrate this, as the dog, and the dogs are released from a cage, and as the dogs came running toward him, like that, he would get down and say, "Hi, come here, come on, come on, come on," and the dog would change like that and come
What a
and like,
beautiful story. Again, the social engagement.
yes,
The
and
good
the dog
social,
would
positive
change, say,
social
"Oh,
engagement
okay,"
with dogs.
and come over and lick him, and you know, I don't
The
know.
good social engagement with dogs.
And me, but it was so fast and an
And it's
animal.
fast. Amazing. Amazing. So now you can think about all these saints in the forest, you know, with tigers, guys that don't eat
Yeah.
them. This is fantastic.
Isn't that interesting? I mean, this all makes me think of that.
That is an immediate cue to the dog that this is a good social engagement thing.
Yes.
This
And
person is not
the
everything.
nicest part to me as a therapist is that it gives you a very rich set of opportunities to influence situations in the way we're talking about. You're not stuck playing dead or falling into a lassitude or getting combative or running away. There's this other thing which is more human, less reptilian, and that lets you call out for help, even if the help is within the interaction with an angry dog or a mugger or something. It gives you a chance to use what's specifically human to solve a physiological
specifically human
distress.
That is his contribution to point out that these tools are specifically mammalian.
Because the other things you do,
rather than reptilian or amphibian or fish.
the other things you do
Yeah.
don't improve the situation because they're predator-prey responses. You're still being chased if you run away. You're still in a bad situation if you're trying to fight an assailant. But if you can affiliate even with the dog or the mugger, then you're in business. Then you've changed everybody's physiology. He's not predatory, she's not a prey.
Yeah, predator prey.
I think that's a superior solution, but I won't put in...
If it worked.
Yeah, if it worked. But I want to put in a word for good old-fashioned animal rage when confronted with certain kinds of difficult situations.
Well,
Immobilized,
to fight
fight or
rather than
flight.
flight.
Yeah, you're getting beaten up.
Different.
And at some point, you need to trust your rage to let it flow through you.
And if a tiger walked in the room, you'd be better off playing dead unless it's a carrion.
Yes.
Rather than running or fighting.
Exactly.
Or chatting up the tiger.